All right, welcome back. As I already briefly explained in my little preview just before, when we started pre-recording this yesterday, I pretty sure it was probably my connection, but I dropped out first, and then I couldn't. Yeah, Paula just kept dropping out. I don't know what happened. So we halted it, and we're back another day. So apologies about the lighting. I am in my stepdad's recording studio, and it's set up for recording music. Right, so it's hot in here, but all good. All right, so pick up where we left off in a second, but I'll just speak about those Australian Anti-ICE campaign lines again. National support line if you are having trouble or you need education, whether it's yourself or someone else, loved one. The number is 1-800-NO-TO-ICE, which is 1-800-666-423. That number again is 1-800-666-86423. So where we left off yesterday was Paula and I started talking, getting into how her son she had packed up her son's room, talking about the grieving process of what that looked like. So let's go from there. Let's finish this and let's do this, Paula.
Awesome, beautiful.
Coming back a second day.
Thank you so much for having me back. Yes, lovely technology. We have to love it and we have to work with it these days, don't we?
We do.
We certainly do. So as I was saying yesterday, one of the things that I had to do as part of my grieving process, but had to do as part of my healing process with my son, was I had to go into his room and transform it. So I went in there and I cleaned it up, put new carpet in it. I painted it and made it a safe place. I made it a sacred place for my clients to then be able to come in, for me to be able to teach my services and provide the services for families that I was working with at the time. And it was a big part of my grieving process. It was a big part of my healing process to be able to transform what I used to see as a negative space, because there was so much, we had so many fights in that room. We had so much, there was so much angst in that room. So by changing that around and by making it into a safe space, a healing space for others, I felt that was creating a safer place for myself to be in, but also then creating that space for others as well.
Yeah. So obviously that was that assisted you in your own healing to be able to work through that. And that was the big spot. When was his turning around point with that? Like, was it further down the track or?
Much further down the track. I think it took him right up until having his daughter. That was his big wake up, really. Like he was still doing different things. But when he had his daughter, she's going to be 4 this year on Australia Day. And so for us, Australia Day, baby. And so when he had her, he realized that he had to change. He had to change to support his partner. He had to change to support her. But it wasn't until last year when he turned, just before he turned 25, that he really started to wake up a lot. I call it the wake up. I call it the ascension. Because what happened was he realized that he was at the stage of his life where he wanted a good job. He and to be a consistent job, because him and his partner want their own house, and they're co-sharing with another with another couple at the moment. But they want their own space. And to create that space, he knew that he had to be completely clean for the jobs that he was applying for. He wanted to, because he had worked in construction, and they random drug test you. But the jobs that he was actually going for was, he wanted to be a diesel mechanic. So he was applying for apprenticeships to be a diesel mechanic, and he had to be 100% clean. And he knew that he was going to be tested for his interviews. So that was, I guess that was like, he wanted to do it then. Whereas, and I think this is the biggest thing that I have learned with drug addiction, and that is that it's not until they are ready to give it up, and there has to be a catalyst to change. There has to be something that is so strong that pulls at them so much that is that change. Having his daughter was, I think, the first change. Did that stop him completely from drugs? No. The change really was when he really wanted an apprenticeship. He really wanted a full-time permanent job. That was his change.
Yeah. And so he's obviously kept on his path since then as well, has he not?
Yeah, so he actually landed up having a couple of interviews with different companies, and he got down to the final stage of one of the apprenticeships, and unfortunately he didn't get it. But what that did was it opened up to a brand new door. And I'm a firm believer that we can go knocking on doors, but until that one is really sort of like ready to fling open and walk straight through it, and I think too, the person has to be ready. Whereas the job that he's just got now, he's working for a big company, and he's driving massive, great big trucks for like this big company at their depot place, and the job's permanent full time. So first time, like, he was working contract, so he would only get contracted for like a week or two, a couple of months. Yeah. This is the first time that he's actually been a full-time employee where, it's different. But that's what he wanted. And I am just so proud of him, because he knew that he had to be clean to actually go into this workforce, but also to have these interviews that he was having for his the apprenticeship. This is not an apprenticeship, but those interviews were the stepping stones to actually help him and his self-esteem, because that is one thing that he always struggled with. And as one of the guys, like the employment place that he went to, that he got right to the final stage, the actual boss actually rang him, the head boss, and rang him and said, "You should be so proud of yourself. You got to the final two out of everyone. You met the CEO, you met the big boss." I think that's what he needed. He needed that confidence. He needed to know that, okay, yes, he didn't get that job that he wanted, but he got that confidence to then keep pushing, to keep going. Whereas like in the past, he just didn't have that. And I think too, sort of when they're a little bit older, maybe, I think there's, that change in maturity. Like they say that boys don't stop maturing until they're 25. Well, he turned 25, and it was almost like a flick of a switch went on for him last year. And what was really interesting last year was we became closer. He would start to actually ring me. He loves burnout comps, so he's got a couple of cars, and so that was his way, and our way of spending time together. So he would actually put me in the burnout car, and we would actually go to his competitions, and I would be in the competition in the burnout. He loved that I was there with him. He loved that, so he could share that with mum. And I loved that I could be there to support him to do that.
Yeah.
So
burnout mum. There we go. Yeah.
Well,
an interesting, a different hobby, but it's still a hobby and something that you both connected with. So.
Absolutely. I mean, he's always loved cars. Ever since he was ever since he could push a little tiny car around, he pushed that car around. He was always a car enthusiast. So it's no surprise that he's built his own race cars. He's just actually building a brand, another one. And I think too, building his cars has given him the confidence. Going on those skid pads, going away to go and do his comps, it's given him the confidence that he's actually needed to move through life. But what's been really funny over the last couple of probably the last couple of years, I was at a really low point probably about 3 years ago, and I was really, really struggling just with everything. And I rang him and I apologized to him, and I said, mate, I am sorry for, this and that and blah, blah, blah. And I was doing a lot of forgiveness work on myself, because I was learning to forgive myself for what I thought that I had done wrong as a mum, and what I had done wrong to let him down, because that's how I felt. I felt that, for him to be where he is, it must be my fault. It must have been something that I did wrong that put him in that situation. And I remember ringing him and just saying, mate, please forgive me for what I did wrong. Please forgive me for, what I didn't do for you. And the words that came out of his mouth that day was probably what changed both of us forever. And that was, he turned around to me and said, Mum, he said, you don't need to be forgiven. He said, Mum, you did everything you possibly could. You loved me. You protected me as much as what you could. You took me away from the situation as soon as it happened, and as soon as you knew about the situation that happened. You provided for me. He said, Mum, my choices were my choices alone. He said, you didn't make me take drugs. You didn't make me do the activities that I've been doing in the last few years. He said, they were my choices, Mum. And that's what I needed to hear from him. I needed to hear that. But what was interesting more than anything was, because for years since he had left and he had got into this recreational use and everything, I learned to use specific wording with him. And that were when he was saying things to me, like when he was screaming at me on the phone, or he was asking for something and I couldn't give it to him. And I would just say, and I would simply say to him, mate, the choices that you're making right now are not okay. The choices of you speaking to me is not okay. I'm hanging up now. He hated that. Yeah. He hated me hanging up on him.
And not only that, but you hit him with absolute truth. One of the things that we do as addicts, we don't want to we can't face reality as it is, which is why we live in that world. But if you actually hear it, to have to hear the truth and to then actually have to process it or respond to it would have actually been a really big thing. I mean, I know what I did with my own mum and similar sorts of things. And I had to have the same conversation with her as well, because she was going through that. But it's a really big thing. I mean, obviously he didn't respond well when you used to do that, did he?
No, he didn't respond well at all. But what was interesting was that he has his own daughter now. And I find that he has his brother, as I said yesterday, and his brother was having some troubles just recently. And so I rang my oldest son, and I just said to him, mate, I said, your brother needs you right now. Can you just be here for him? And he said, yep, no worries, Mum. What was dumbfounding to me was everything that I had been saying to him for years and years and years and years. I didn't think that he even took in. I didn't think that he listened to me. He was actually repeating them to his brother. And I'm sitting there in tears, because I'm just like, you did listen to me all this time. You did take on what I thought you hadn't.
Yeah.
And, I actually hear him not only say that to his brother, but when he's around mates and they're having trouble, he's saying things to his mates that I used to say to him, and I'm like, oh, you did listen to Mama. I didn't think you did listen.
It's it's actually a really good point. It just goes to show that even though we are in our grips of addiction, and that although we're, doing everything that we shouldn't be doing, and when we're, given the guidance and, love from mothers and family and all the rest of it,
Yeah.
and we kick up the fuss and, we throw a tantrum like a 2-year-old, basically, that we were actually listening, and how important it actually is that even when someone is in the throes of addiction and you're not getting through, and it doesn't seem like you're getting through, best thing that you can do, apart from, you realize you have to set healthy boundaries for yourself and you have to care for yourself, is that those people actually need that support. And although they're, doing the worst things towards you because of the things that you're saying, because it's the truth, and, because there's so much turmoil going on inside of them, the best thing that anyone can do in a support role or as a family role, as a mum, is just to keep supporting them and keep giving them that love. Because we do take it in. It just takes a while for us to come back to earth and for it all to click in.
Yeah, and it is a process, like one thing that I used to say, like one thing I used to do with Hayden was I would just send him random messages all the time, and that was, please always remember I love you.
Yeah.
No matter what, I love you. Whether I heard back from him or not, it didn't actually matter. I just needed for him to always know that even though I may not have been able to be there with him for him, I still loved him, no matter what he was doing. Because one of the things he used to say all the time was, "You will hate me because I'm such a up."
Mm-hmm.
You will hate me because I've hurt you, I've screwed, I've done this. And I'm like, mate, I didn't like your choices that you were making. It didn't ever mean that I didn't love you. And I think, and this is why I put it in my book. And that was, as a parent, I always thought that I just had to love everything that they did. But one of my lessons and one of my biggest learnings in this whole scenario of being a parent to my son was that I will always love him. It doesn't mean that I have to like the choices he's made. It doesn't mean that I have to like or love the choices that he was making or the behavior that he was actually doing. And I think, that's something that was really, really important to have in my book, because that was what I really, really struggled with. I so struggled with oh my God, I just have to love his behavior. I have to love what he's doing. No, I didn't love what he was doing. I loved him, but I didn't love what he was doing. That was something that I felt that I had to add to my book, because I know that parents that have children with behavioral issues, they're just I just have to love them. Yeah, you have to love them, but you don't have to like what they're doing. But it comes back down to the choices. We need to be teaching everybody, I believe, hey, the choices that you're making are your choices. They're not my choice. I'm not making you do this. This is a choice you're choosing right now. And that's what I used to say to him all the time. Hey, mate, the choices that you're making at the moment are your choices. Yeah, I know, Mum.
True. Yeah.
And he eventually, as you said, to begin with, it was no, they're not, because he didn't want to acknowledge any of the choices he was making.
No.
And that was okay. And that, again, was part of that reasoning and everything. And I had this really interesting conversation with him one day. And I said to him, hey, mate, can I ask you a question about why you take drugs? And he said, of course you can, Mum. And I said, what makes you take them? And he goes, it numbs me.
Yeah.
He's like, it numbs me. Yep. It numbs me from my pain. It numbs me from my trauma. It numbs me. He said, the only problem is that when I come back out of it, it makes me feel it even more, and then I don't like that feeling. So
it
then
does. It intensifies it. Yeah.
and so it intensifies it. So
Yeah.
and I said, okay, mate, well, now that we know that, let's work on some strategies of how to work through that, how to deal with that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what have you. Like I think he found ways to like manage it, because he was always a child that, you know, if you said to him, don't touch that because it's hot, he would go and touch it.
Was one of those trials. Yes, I think that is one thing that most addicts do actually have in common, apart from, you know, the background of trauma as to the majority reason as well into it.
Yeah. So, you know, he was always, I learned from a very early time in his childhood that, you know, I could say something was blue and he would say it was grey. Like, you know, it would always be that. Oh,
Yes.
it was
Yes,
frustrating.
I do remember. Yeah, I remember being a teenager. I remember doing that to mum as well, and I was always right, and I'd know better. And, you know, she sits and laughs at me now as I watch my kids, and she's just like, I copped it, so it's your turn.
Yeah, and like it's so funny, like because every now and again he'll actually ring me and go, and he'll say to me, "Oh my God, Mum, like was I like this?" And I'm like, "Oh, buddy, you were worse." And he goes,
Yeah.
"Nothing can be worse than that." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, you were worse." And he goes, "No, that's not possible." Like, and I'm like, "Oh, calm as a bitch, mate. Calm as a bitch."
It is.
I'm like,
It will come back. Yep.
you're getting what I had to put up with. Like, and he is like, it's so funny. Like, but I mean, my granddaughter's got 101. Like, I mean, she's just got more sass. Like he was
Yeah.
sassy, but she tops it. Like she's hilarious. She's gonna give them the run for their money. Let's put it that way.
And I think girls do have a little bit of a streak of that, unfortunately. I know I definitely did, and I see it in my daughter, but not so much my son. So, yes,
Yes.
it's
Yeah.
definitely a trait, I think, a little bit more than
Yeah.
anything else. But,
Yeah.
yeah, so obviously with all of that as well, you know, like we talked about yesterday as well, obviously you had other diagnoses and stuff, and you've come through this, and you've worked through a lot of stuff and bits and pieces. Like, how, because you're just talking about your granddaughter then, and you said, you know, she's got STAS, obviously. Does she have behavioural and issues similar as well? And where are his behavioural and all that sort of stuff that, you know, all those diagnoses that kept coming? Where's he with all of that now? Like, what I'm presuming that a lot of that has changed, and a lot of that comes back to, you know, knowing himself. But tell me, what exactly does it mean? What does it look like, and where is that at?
Yeah. So I look at my granddaughter as a mini daddy. Like she does what he does. He, like, you know, sort of, they are very much the same. Which is very, very interesting in the fact that, you know, sort of they haven't, like, she's been exposed, like she has been exposed to a lot, and what have you, but, you know, sort of, I think that a lot of it does come down to her personality, just like it was my son's personality. I do see that he still struggles with like concentration, and, you know, like he cannot sit still. Even when he is asleep, he doesn't sit still. And, you know, like I watch my granddaughter sleeping again. She is just like her dad. Like she's asleep, but arms are going everywhere. And that was him. Like he was always like that. Ever since he was very tiny, like I would put him in the bassinet and he'd be like, you know, the wrong way around. Be in the cot and his legs would be stuck out of the cot. Like she's exactly the same as him, like in so many ways. And I think the behavior is definitely, like, you know, very, very similar. Like where that will end up going, I don't know. But yeah, like I do think that he still very much struggles. He definitely struggles with PTSD, his depression. He has his really good days and he has his really bad. I think that having this job though really helps him because he knows he has structure. Like he knows he's got to get up for work at this time and he goes and does it. Whereas when
Absolutely. Yep.
he has structure now. Like, he has the weekends to, with his daughter and his partner and his cars. But, Monday to Friday is I get up for work at, 5:30 in the morning. I'm at work at 6, come home at like whatever time he comes home. So, I actually rang him on Sunday night and I'm like, how you going, mate? How's the job? Blah, blah, blah. And he goes, yeah, Mum, I'm just getting ready for work. So he's already preparing for work the day before. Whereas before it would be like, get up, go to work. Like, this is a really big changing point for him. And I do feel that, he's tired. He's absolutely exhausted by the end of the day and the weekend. But I think this is the structure that he needed. Is he going to always have struggles with ADD, ADHD, and all that sort of stuff? I don't know that really goes away. I think it's the fact that we learn how to manage it. Like last year, I'm 47, turning 48. And last year, I realized that I'm ADHD and autistic. And, I haven't gone and got the diagnosis because I don't feel like I need one. I don't feel like it's going to prove anything. I know that it's there. But then I've been able to go back in my life and go, so that's why I'm asked. That's why I have trouble. That's why that happens. So for me, I understand probably him more now that I have come to accept it within myself. My younger one is exactly the same. He's ADHD. I firmly believe that he's autistic. And so is my older one. So is it genetic? I have to question that now. But I do have different beliefs around ADHD and autism on a spiritual way, on a spiritual aspect as well. But that's in my next book.
Love it. Yeah. Actually, while we're on that subject, because we will have to wrap up soon because time's just disappearing actually today.
I
know. There's a couple of things I just wanted to talk to you about your book. Like one, I just get you to, obviously your name and the title again, but in your book, I think it was like fourth or fifth chapter, you actually talked about there was 4 points that were key for you.
Yep.
Would you be able to talk about them briefly? Because I thought they were really helpful. And not just your journey, but
I remember what they were now.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Do you want me to bring it up? Bear with me.
Yeah, I was going to say if you can get it up, that would be good because I haven't got it in front of me. There was a lot of so if you can sort of just let me know which one, because there was quite a few tips in there that I had given in steps. So just let me know which one it was. But in the meantime, while you're looking that up, this is the book, Parenting from Chaos to Freedom, Living with Parental Grief. It is available on Amazon, on Kindle, tablet, and it is also available on your phone as well. So it's a ebook download that you can get on Amazon just by Googling Parenting from Chaos to Freedom. It's not an expensive book. It's only $7.99, which is absolutely under $10, and you get a book that's not only a story, but a lot of tips and hints and a lot of resources in there to be able to understand and to be able to move through the stages of the grief, but also being able to understand as a parent with a child with either a disability or an addiction, how to be able to manage that within yourself. Because one of the biggest takeaways of my book, and that is that we cannot save another person. We need to save ourselves. And that was my biggest wake up in being a parent of a child with an addiction and different mental health, because my whole, for such a long time, right up until he was a teenager, I thought if I saved him, then everything would be okay.
Thing would be fun. Yeah.
You know, but the more that I tried to save him, the further I pushed him away from me.
Yeah.
And again, I had to forgive myself for that. Like, you know, because I had a lot of guilt around, there was times in my life with my son where I loved him, but I hated him.
Yeah.
I hated the circumstance. I hated what he was doing to the family. I hated that I didn't have a relationship with him. There was so much that I hated. And again, I had to forgive myself because I thought that I was a bad mum for hating that. I must be bad. There must be something wrong with me because this is how I feel. So what I did was suppressed everything that I was feeling because I thought that it was wrong to feel it. And it wasn't until I actually accepted it, and it wasn't until I started surrendering to how I was feeling, did I start to really be able to accept it, move through it, and actually then do the processes like what I've written in the book to be able to strategize, to understand where I was coming from, where he was coming from, where the whole family dynamics was, be able to move beyond it. So
I think you pretty much covered exactly like what I was looking at. So in just an excerpt, it says, in this book, I wanted you to understand that help, guidance, support, and tools are needed and available. I wanted to share what I had done to get myself out of the grief and into me. And step one, you had released the expectations of what you thought your children would be. Yeah, which I think is absolutely huge.
huge.
2, we are popping at the illusion that everything must be perfect. Literally, you describe it as popping a balloon, like it's not perfect. And, there's going to be failures, and to be able to, just let go of it, because it's almost, that limiting belief that, this is how it should be, and you're not living up to it, just causes that pain and insecurity and the mental health and the emotions. And obviously it makes you sick, very sick. Step 3, you had connect with your emotions to find what you're reacting to. You will only ever be triggered emotionally by your children if you have not dealt with the feelings that are actually within yourself. I thought that was actually big one.
Really big one.
Yes, without a doubt. And not just because of, connecting to the emotions for yourself, but purely for the fact that, those emotions, you're reflecting that to your children, where it's actually your own problem and not the feeling you're having towards your children. Do you want to elaborate on that a little bit, or?
So one of the I've got this in the book, but I'll share it now. And that was the story of, I was trying to open a glass jar, and this glass jar would not open, didn't matter what I did. And I was screaming at this glass jar. I was so angry at this glass jar. But I wasn't angry at the glass jar for not opening. I was angry at the situation that I was in with my son. I was angry at the fact that he had been abused by my boyfriend. I was angry that I didn't know how to handle my anger to be able to help him with his anger. And he, after the abuse, one of the things that happened was he went from this placid, happy-go-lucky child from 0 to 3 to a child that I didn't even know. He was so aggressive and angry. And here's me saying to him, stop being angry, don't do this, don't do that. And here's me absolutely screaming my head off at this bloody glass jar because I couldn't open it.
Yep.
What was I showing him? I was showing him
monkey see, monkey do. Yeah.
Monkey see, monkey do. Right. And, one of the things, again, that is a big part of this book, and that is for parents to accept and acknowledge their own emotions so that we know how to accept and acknowledge our children's. Children don't know what emotions are. They have no idea. So who are the role models? We are. So I was angry all the time. Like even between the age of 0 to 3 and above, I used to scream at him all the time. Like I grew up where my mum would scream at us. She would, smack us. And, you know, I thought that's how you parented.
Yeah.
I thought that's what it must be. So
Yeah.
I was parenting him how I thought the role model of my parents, that's how I must parent. I must be angry. I must be aggressive. I must be dominant.
Mm.
And it wasn't, because it showed him that because I was angry all the time, that it, sort of made him even more angry. And I didn't know how to manage my anger.
Mm.
So because I didn't know how to manage my anger, here's me trying to go say to him, don't, but I wasn't managing myself. So what was the trigger? Every time he got angry, he was triggering me because he was my shadow.
Yeah.
He was my shadow. Everything that he was doing was everything that I didn't know how to deal with myself.
Oh.
So who did I take it out on? I took it out on him.
Yep. Not even realizing it. Yep.
Without complete and utter, and this is what I was saying before, where I've now asked for forgiveness for, and again, it's part of in the book, and that is one of the things that I had to acknowledge and accept as a mum was that in every situation I was handling it the best that I could with the knowledge and the wisdom I had.
Yeah.
We can't do any more than that. What we can do is learn the knowledge and wisdom for ourselves so that we can share that with our children.
Yeah. Hindsight's a beautiful thing though too.
Hindsight's amazing. Would I go back and change anything? No, I wouldn't now. Years ago, I would be like, I want to change everything. I want to change my whole life. I want to change his life. But I wouldn't change it because I wouldn't be who I am today without the experiences that I've been through.
And you wouldn't have that relationship with him that you do have now either.
Correct.
Which, is probably the most important thing and the thing that you were yearning from day dot, but it took you 25 years to get there.
Yeah, absolutely. And, that statement of the illusion bubble, I'll just share where that came from. So it was actually, I had written, I think, 16 chapters or something like that of my book. And I was really, really struggling with another illusion that I had. And that was, I really thought having a grandchild that I would be in her life every single day. And it would be this glorious thing. And I'd be her Grammy and, and everything like that. And again, it didn't happen the way I wanted it to. And so I was having a really, really hard time. And I was very, very sick at the time. And I was laying in bed. And that was when I went, oh, my God, it's the illusion. It's the illusion. It's the expectation. I have an illusion of what I want something to be like. I wanted my granddaughter in my life. I wanted my son to be a particular thing. It was an illusion. Can I control that? No, I can't. So I saw it as like a bubble. And this is where this actual chapter landed up coming in, the illusion chapter, because I grabbed pen and paper and I'm like, oh my God, this is it. This is the chapter. And I saw, what I did was I actually had a big bubble in front of me and I put everything that I had expected to be, for my son, my son's partner, and for the baby. And I put the whole thing in a bubble. And then I grabbed a pin, imaginary pin, and I popped it and I just went, and I blew it out. Oh my God, the actual sickness that I had disappeared within like seconds. And I'm like, so that's all it was. Just that illusion. It was the expectation that I was holding that made me so sick again. And so when we are able to see it as, okay, this is an expectation, this is a belief, this is an illusion, and we're able to see it from a different point of view, or we're able to put it into a bubble and pop it, we become free.
Yeah.
And that's, where that freedom comes in, that chaos to freedom.
Yeah. You're so right. You're so right. I will wrap it up a little bit, but and your step 4 was your forgiveness. And once again, you started with realizing that you had to forgive yourself and forgive those expectations of yourself.
Yep.
So I just want to recap from the last 2 days that we've done this. So I think one of the biggest things that we can really take out of this is that once ice hits a family or an individual, it really does affect everyone. Not everyone that is taking the drug is unaffected. And it has devastating consequences for the family. Obviously, it took a very big toll on yourself. You tried your best, but it was hard. But obviously, partway through, you realised that you had to make those clear-cut boundaries in order to protect yourself, to protect your heart, to make your own physical health, mental health, emotionally. Because as we know, it's with this, it's not obviously it's the whole family that needs to heal, but it's holistically. So we need mind, body, and spirit that all needed to be healed.
Yeah.
You went on a massive journey in which you did that, which is absolutely brilliant. I mean, what you do today in your everyday life, you're basically helping those that you have been in that exact position of yourself, which is just beautiful. So, and once again, like also the point that we've seen that before was that even though the addict isn't listening at the time, they are listening. So even though we have to set those boundaries and we have to have that tough love, that we do need to tell them we still love them, because the drug and them are two very different people.
Yeah.
And we need to remember we need to separate the two, purely because that they don't become the drug doesn't become them. But when they're on the drug, they are someone different. No one wants to know. But in that is their time in which they need someone that they do need to love them, even though they won't accept it. And
Absolutely.
I think it's so beautiful, that you've just stuck by him, even though with those boundaries, and obviously there was a time period off and all the rest of it. But you were a good mum. You stuck by him. You were there, ready for him when he came through the worst. And I think that's remarkable, because unfortunately a lot of addicts lose their families at this point.
Yeah.
And he has such a better chance in actually recovering. And obviously he's doing really well, which I'm really happy for. Because without that support, there's nothing, and they're not going to get the help and the love and the respect and that time and space to be able to heal.
Yes. Yeah. And, sort of, there was a saying that I used to say for my son all the time, and that is, you can lead a horse to water, you can't make them drink.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's not an easy road, because when you're watching your son do that, I can only imagine what my mum felt. And I've seen it even just with friends. So I can imagine it would be harrowing. I'm so glad that you didn't give up on him. You're a beautiful, strong, amazing woman, absolute powerhouse of a woman in terms of what you've overcome and what you've come through. And to have these realizations and to come out with it in a book and to, practice it, in your daily life, to be able to help other people. That's a very big, strong, large quality, and so proud of people like you that hold space in this world for us. Is there anything else you'd like to add tonight, or
just like one of the other reasons why I wrote this book and why I opened the Heart Centre Academy of Healing is one of the hardest things about this journey of drug addiction, and that is the actual drug addict feels alone and the family feels alone. And so I formed the Heart Centre Academy of Healing, so no matter who it was and any situation, that they never had to feel alone again. And so the space that you now know, Opal, I created that space so that it was a hub, it was a safe space for people to be able to come, sit, reflect, heal. But this book as well, like, it's an easy read book so that drug addicts can read the book if they wish to, because it's not a big book. It's not this, you're to blame and everything like that. Nobody is to blame. Everybody is on a journey. And I guess the biggest takeaway of all of this, and that is every single soul in this whole entire world is on a journey of their own. but that journey doesn't have to be a lonely one. The journey is the choice of the individual to what they choose it to be for themselves.
Yeah, that's beautiful, beautiful worded. Oh, and yes, I do look forward to your space. I'm going to be holding some workshops with you, for once again, people suffering with addiction and their support partners, just to be able to create that community, create that guidance, and to create a stable environment, because they're isolated. They've got, not a lot of services around them, and I know in every state in Australia, their waiting time for addiction recovery is in services is just crazy. It does my head in, but to be able to have those services so that people can connect and can start to get clean today rather than have to wait another 8 months is what we all need, and it will just make a better community for all of us. So
Absolutely.
And once again, we're ex-addicts. Well, I am, but we have so much to give. We can change. We can contribute so much, because we are valued members of society if people just give us a chance. So thank you. I appreciate it. I look forward to working with you. That's right. I'll just repeat those numbers again for anyone that's watching. So anyone, once again, if you're having any issues, whether you need some education, whether it's for a loved one, for yourself, whatever it might be, give the Australian Anti-Ice campaign a call. The national support line is 1-800 No2Ice, which converts to 1-800 668 423. That number again is 1-800 668 423. All right. Thank you very much, Paula. And
thank
see you all again soon.
Beautiful. Thanks, guys.